Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for attending tonight's commission meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Walters. Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Holland.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Pastor Artrell Harris of Roswell Church of Christ. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Shall we all pray? Most gracious and all-wise God, we come to you tonight asking your blessing upon our city. Lord, we need you. Our city needs you. Lord, we're seeing violence all across the country. Lord, we ask you to heal our country and heal our land. Lord, we pray for the fallen officers that we've seen this year, our officers, our Kansas City, Kansas family members, Brad Lancaster, Dave Melton. Bless their memory, Lord. Let their legacy live on. Let us not go back to business as usual within our city. Lord, we ask that you would reduce crime, reduce poverty, give us more affordable housing, present more jobs. Lord, we ask that you would keep our firemen safe, our policemen safe, and our EMTs safe. Lord, bless this gathering of commissioners, that they'll do your business, that they'll be reminded always that their first responsibility is to live a life that glorifies you. Lord, we end this prayer now. We ask that you would bless our city, bless our country. Look in on us. Deliver us, Lord. In the mighty name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. We appreciate your being here tonight. I'll ask the clerk now if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet has been distributed. Under Section 13, the Administrator's Agenda, we have additional information for item number 2F, budget items, a resolution, and an ordinance. The first item is a submission of the following documents: changes to the Administrator's amended 2016 proposed 2017 budget for an additional meal rate reduction to, that is referred to as the yellow sheet, and the resolution and ordinance approving and adopting the 2016 amended budget and 2017 annual budget of the Unified Government, 2016, the 2021 Capital Maintenance Improvement Program, and the amended 2016 and 2017 capital budget.
All right, thank you. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement governing this meeting, followed by the items on the Planning and Zoning consent agenda. I will just remind the audience this, as part of our Planning and Zoning meeting, this is a required statement to be read at each meeting. Madam Clerk?
We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the Commission are Mayor Mark Holland, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Hal Walker, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2. Commissioner Ann Mugia, District 3, is unable to be here. Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4. Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5. Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6. Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7. And Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has three options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with the statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, the Planning Commission's recommendation on all items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, that matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner McKiernan.
I've had contact with opponents of SB 2016-47 and opponents of A 2016-7.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum.
I've had correspondence with opponents of item 3116, change of zone, and correspondence from proponents of SP 2016-51.
Thank you. I will acknowledge.
I cannot hear her. Could you speak into the microphone?
If you have any further concerns, sir, we would ask you to pull off to the side to talk to a staff and not to interrupt the meeting. I've had contact with A3, number 3115 proponents, and C1 PR 2016-16 proponents. Are there any other disclosures? Let the record show there are no further disclosures.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Change of zone application item 13102, Steve Warger with Warger Associates. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to CP3 Planned Commercial District for a storage unit at 7756 Holiday Drive, recommended for approval. Item 2, 3113 Joe Jennings, change of zone from R1 Single Family District to AG Agricultural District to keep existing accessory building at 4600 Sorter Drive, recommended for denial. Item 3, 3115 Corp Maxwell with Posanelli PC, change of zone from CP1 Planned Limited Business District to CP2 Planned General Business District for an 89-unit hotel at 3440 Rainbow Boulevard, recommended for approval. Item 4, 3116 Jennifer Pouse PC with MDS Realty Investment Group, change of zone from R1B Single Family District to R2 Two Family District for a duplex at 2912 North 47th Street, recommended for denial. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2016-48, Parallel Senior Villas Inc., special use permit for a beauty salon at 6246 Parallel Parkway for current residents, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 2, SP 2016-51, Jamie S. Applegate, special use permit for a kennel for 5 dogs at 2819 North 100th Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Plan review application, item 1, PR 2016-16, Justin's Hunting with Crossland Construction, preliminary plan review for a new building for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, South Patrol Division at 2100R Metropolitan Avenue, recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
All right, at this time, I'll ask if any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wishes to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda. If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by a single vote, following the recommendation of the planning commission. If you would like to set an item aside, please step to the microphone at this time.
Yeah, Ryan Dugdale, North Kansas City, petition number 3102.
Say that one more time.
Ryan Dugdale, North Kansas City. We'd like to set aside petition number 3102.
That's
3102.
A1.
Thank you.
A1.
It will be set aside.
Move for approval for all remaining items?
Second.
Let the record show I see no one else coming forward at this time to set an item aside. All remaining items will be taken by a single vote. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us to the item that was set aside. Number 3102, change of zone from R1 Single Family District to CP3. What I'm going to do for this is I'm going to start with asking our staff to frame the situation. I may ask the applicant to speak first, and then call on people to speak on it. So, would you like to speak to it, Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue that's of concern to the applicant at this point, I believe, is just one issue. There's a stipulation that would require them to extend sewer to this site. They would prefer to use a septic system because of the cost of the sewer extension. At the time the first building went in this area, the landscape business, they went in on a septic system, but now that this is potentially, it really is creating a commercial development, and our code requires that when you create a commercial development, you provide all public service to that, which would include the sewer. And perhaps, I can't recall off the top of my head if we've spoken with them about a benefit district that could extend to the site or not, but Mr. Dugdale could probably address that.
Who would you like to address that?
The applicant is Mr. Dugdale.
Okay, sir.
Or the applicant's representative.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't think we believe we had any discussions about creating a benefit district. The existing sanitary sewer that we would have to tie into is approximately 2,600 feet away. For a project of this size, it's just not economically feasible to extend a sanitary sewer main for 2,600 feet, which could be, in excess of $200,000. There was one other issue. We didn't want to have an opaque fence on the north side of the project, which there is with the lot split proposed. If this rezoning is approved, there will be a portion of the land that will stay with the landscaping property that's to the west, directly to the west, and between our property, the landscaping property, there's to the north of that is the existing railroad. So we would prefer to only have the opaque fence on the south and east side to screen the storage from public view.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the Planning Commission did approve that.
They did approve
the other type of fencing for the north side, but I'm checking. Yes, they did. So that issue has been.
That's already been resolved.
That's part of the existing recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Was there any you said there was no discussion about a possible benefit district for the sewer?
No, apparently we have not.
So, Mr. Bach, what would be the process if we're going to discuss a possible benefit district for the sewer to look at future development?
What we would do is identify all the properties along the area that would go from where the current sewer exists up into where his property is. Then you could, I guess to frame the issue, you would kind of look at it from a perspective that if any of those properties develop in the future, that they would pay into what the cost would be to build, or their share of the cost would be to come into a benefit district, and then they could pay over a number of years. There's a few different ways we could go about doing it, but in order to do that, that essentially then means that the government says we're going to take on all the cost of running the sewer line up and down that area. We build that into our issuance, do it, and then the applicant would have their percentage of what there would be that they would pay for, and then we may or may not get money back out of other properties going forward based on whether or not they develop. On the flip side, and I haven't done any analysis up and down this property to look at it from a development perspective, but by putting the sewer line in place, it could encourage something to come along there, but that's speculative at this point for me to think that could happen.
Okay, so you're asking for an exemption where you would have septic instead of sewer?
Correct.
And then the question is, this is a question I have for staff, is would it be possible that if he did do septic and we decided to do a benefit district, that he could tie in later in terms of the cost of putting in the septic versus retrofitting that back to sewer? Would there be an unnecessary expense by the applicant to put in a septic and then go to sewer afterwards?
Well, the cost of a septic would all be costs that he wouldn't incur if we were saying we're going to run a sewer line to it. And I don't know the capacity for the size of project he has. I would assume it's probably not a real big septic system coming in here, so you're probably in a $10,000 range.
Yeah, it's a 1,000-gallon tank with about 300 square feet of laterals, so it's 30 by 10. I've talked to my client before. We would definitely be in favor of installing the septic system, and if and at what time sanitary main was extended to our site, and whether it was a benefit district and we paid our fees for the cost to our site, we would tie in at a later date.
Okay. Commissioner Markley.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on sort of the nature of this area. It's a bunch of farm fields, and it's out in Morris. Everybody out there is on septic. So while I appreciate the idea of trying to get sewer to neighborhoods, I don't feel like we should force that upon a business that's willing to locate in a neighborhood where we don't have many businesses, just so that we can get sewer to an area where really it should be our obligation to get sewer to those areas. That's just my feeling.
Fair enough. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the public hearing. And after the public hearing, then we'll go to the commission for further discussion and action. Is there anyone in attendance tonight who would like to speak in favor of this project? Let the record yes.
Hi, my name's Kurt Weber. I'm the one that's trying to develop the property, 4767 Quivira Drive, which is like a half a mile from this property. I concur with the commissioner, and I have had meetings with the public health department and the people who issue the permits, and it meets all requirements based on their assessment. So he couldn't be here tonight because he's at another meeting, but he was willing to come. But I just appreciate your considerations. I'm a small individual just trying to do a business economic development that I believe is going to be very good for the area.
All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor? Let the record show no one else coming forward. Would anyone like to speak in opposition to this project? Let the record show no one's coming forward to speak in opposition. So what we have before us now is a request by the petitioner to be allowed to do septic with a stipulation that should sewer be run, they would pay their fair share to connect. If there were a benefit district, you'd pay your percentage of the benefit district as well as the connection fee to the sewer as a stipulation. So that's the recommendation. That would take, if I'm not mistaken, to do that change, it would take 8 votes. Okay.
I make a motion based on everything the mayor just said.
All right. So it is as presented for approval with the one change to go to septic with the stipulation that if and when sewer is run, they would not only pay a percentage of the benefit district, they would also pay the connection fee.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and second before us. Is there any further discussion? And it does require 8 votes. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your investment in our community. All right, that completes our consent agenda and now brings us to the planning and zoning non-consent agenda. I did have an oversight earlier. We did have another elected official who was here who has left after the consent agenda, but Judge Kate Lynch was in the attendance, and I had intended to recognize her before she left. So we are now on our planning and zoning non-consent agenda. That brings us to item A1. And I'll turn it over to staff for presentation.
Mr. Mayor, the applicant is desiring to have a used car dealer at 402 Osage. It's recommended to you by the Planning Commission with the stipulation that all of the cars for sale be inside because the only parking on site is required parking for the square footage of the industrial facility there.
All right. I will ask if the applicant is here. The applicant would like to come forward. Is there a representative for the applicant, Zachary Rubio, for Los Cuates Auto Sales? All right, and without an applicant, we will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance tonight who would like to speak in favor of this application? Let the record show no one is here to speak in favor. If anyone would like to speak in opposition to this application, please come forward at this time. Let the record show no one came forward to speak in opposition. The public hearing is closed.
Move to approve the recommendation for approval as submitted by the Planning Commission.
Second.
All right, it is properly before us. I see no further conversation. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
No.
The vote is 8-1. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us to item B1, a vacation application. Resnick Muslet, I'll ask staff to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application before you is recommended for denial. The vacation is not necessary to allow the current proposed development to move forward, but there is currently a lawsuit between the applicant and a neighboring property owner over property line dispute and damage to the neighbor's property that was done by the construction crews. If this were to be denied, they could apply again in a year.
So help me understand, this is currently in litigation?
Not this particular action, but there is litigation between the applicant and his neighbor over their property lines and damage that was done across the property line to the adjacent neighbor.
Okay. All right. I'll ask the applicant if you'd like to come forward and speak.
G'day, Will Anderson, BHC Roads, new address 7112 State Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. As Rob said, this is in front of the courts at the moment. It's sort of hindering any further movement on this development. If it was held over for 12 months, I'd prefer that it was held over until the court cases was sorted out and then allow us to bring it forward again. But if it's recommended for denial, the vote carries and it's held over for 12 months, we will live with that. Okay?
Okay, so you're speaking on behalf, you are the applicant or on behalf of the applicant?
Applicant Will Anderson, yep.
All right, so you don't have a preference because it's going to take a year regardless?
The court case has been going on been 6 months now.
All right. So if we could, do they want to withdraw the application?
No, they will eventually want to vacate the alley to that length. It doesn't abut the property of the, somebody would have to describe the word abut, but abut means that, to me anyway, as a surveyor, means the boundaries are common. The boundaries are not common. The vacation that we're applying for is not a common boundary. There's a space between the two boundaries. Okay?
All right, so your request, just help me understand your request, is vote either way, you don't care?
I do care.
Okay, I didn't understand you because I thought you said it doesn't matter one way or the other.
I don't think the court case will be resolved quickly. So if it's going to be denied and I have to wait 12 months for this, so be it. If I could be held over for another 2 months, then that would serve our purpose better.
So your preference is to hold it over for 2
Correct.
months? 2 months.
Correct.
Thank you. All right. That was important that I asked that question.
It is.
All right. Let me open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance tonight who would like to speak in favor of this item? Let the record show no one's coming forward. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak in opposition to this application?
I'm Chris Cazilla, 601, 603, 605, 10 South Tremont, Kansas City, Kansas. It's my property that they have damaged in their construction situation. I pray that the commission makes a motion to deny removing the alley from city property. There's no reason to. It's already, the alley is already included in Mr. Muslet's decision to put property and development, there we go, there's a magic term. The alley has already been given to Mr. Muslet in his development. There's no reason to abandon the alley whatsoever. It's already his. We own the bulk of the property in the square delineated by the alley on the south of Central Avenue, Tremont, and said alley. And we would enjoy public property around the bulk of our property on Central Avenue. So I wish to deny this application.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Let the record show no one else is coming forward. We will close the public hearing. Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property has had a storied history over the past year or so. Mr. Richardson, let me just make sure that I've got my facts correct on this. On this property, dirt was moved before hauling permits were issued?
Correct.
On this property, no silt fence was installed on the property from which the dirt was being removed or nor where it was being transported?
Correct.
And excavation might have started on this property before a permit was pulled for excavation?
I'm not certain about that, but I believe so.
And that there was a plan change made that wasn't approved but was then executed by the developer?
Correct. They built a retaining wall in a place
And
that
in
wasn't shown
the
on
process
the
of building
plans.
that retaining wall, they damaged Mr. Cazilla's property and then put the retaining wall actually outside the boundaries of their original plan?
Correct.
And that crossed the property line?
The retaining wall itself didn't cross the property line. While they were constructing it, they went across the property line and caused a retaining wall on the adjoining property to fall.
Okay. In my opinion, since the applicant can continue to work on this project once the current litigation is resolved, and since the applicant can reapply in a year if they continue to desire vacation, I would move that we uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the vacation as presented.
Second.
All right, so the motion before us is to uphold the Planning Commission recommendation for denial. And it has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? All right, it is properly before us. I'll just remind us, we don't do this very often, but if you vote yes, you agree with the Planning Commission and deny this application. If you vote no, you disagree with the Planning Commission and you want to allow this petition to move forward. Does that make sense? All right. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, that application has been denied. Thank you. All right, that concludes our planning and zoning agenda and brings us to our regular agenda. The items before us now are before us on the non-planning consent agenda. Would any commissioner or anyone in attendance tonight like to remove an item from the non-planning consent agenda? Any item not removed will go through and on a single vote.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, let the record show no one is moving forward to remove an item. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right. That brings us now to our administrator's agenda, an ordinance establishing, this is the, we are now at the budget adoption process. Is that right?
We have action on Smith first.
Thank you. So the first item is an ordinance around the SMID.
Thank you, Mayor Holland, Commissioners. As you may recall, the SMID district was approved last month with revised boundaries as shown here. This ordinance for your consideration tonight simply adds the revised boundary and legal description. Happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve the revised boundaries as submitted.
Second.
All right. I do not see any further discussion. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us now to the budget adoption process. This is a process that we have been actively engaged in since last October, and a process we will take up again this October, as we will start with a commission retreat to look at priorities, and then we begin immediately capital improvement discussion in the fall, and then a public hearing in February. So the year-round budget process that we have adopted, I will say another thank you to our staff for their hard work on this, and to the commission for really the diligent work that we've done over the course of the last year. I will recognize Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some more information that should help ease some questions about what I've been asking for, which is a fire station. In 1990, there were 5,365 people that lived west of 92nd Street, north of Parallel. In 2014, there were 13,719. But put that in perspective of households, in 1990, there were 1,328 households. In 2014, you got to remember, we're a year and a half in, there's 3,790. That is not counting the Delaware Ridge Apartments, the Village West Apartments, which is 306 units, and the Phase 2, which is 312 units. The thing that is important when you think about that, if you take the 3,790 properties, average them by 4,000, they are paying an annual tax of $15,160,000. If you add north of State Avenue, it's $19,272,000. Now, I realize that's a lot of money, but if you look at what's going on, we often talk about the pole barn at 123rd and Leavenworth Road, but the closest ambulance to that area is at 94th and State. And I realize when you build a fire station, it costs between $275,000 and $300,000 note to carry that through. And I know there are a bunch of moving parts in this, but at $15 million that area pays out there, I don't think $300,000 to get something started out there. And I know we have some moving parts on the inside of the city, but it's just like when General Motors built, and I don't know if you know or not, but for 17 years I worked on a car that was coming into the plant. And then they expand the plant. Then they put the metal in, they put the outside in, they put the roof on, then they bring the equipment in, then they bring the operators. We can worry about manning this place once it gets going with the other moving parts on the east and south side of town. The thing is, folks, at $15 million, we deserve a fire station out west. And we deserve it not 2 or 3 years, we deserve it now. Like I said, there are multiple moving parts, but we have to start somewhere. This is where I'm starting. I'd like to have Doug find $300,000 so we can get it going. And think about this, $15 million, and the closest ambulance to us is at 94th and State. And I want to make that in a motion.
Second.
Commissioner McKiernan.
You know, Commissioner Kane, I certainly agree with that. And one of the things that I'm still confused about, Doug, is that when I look on page, I don't even know what page it is, but when I look in our CMIP schedule, debt schedule, consolidated, that we went over earlier this year, dated May 4th, I find line 8079 under Public Building Commission, tagged fire station, with $4 million allocated for 2017. And I have to confess that I thought that that money was dedicated toward just what Commissioner Kane had said, toward getting the process started, that we just maybe hadn't figured the location yet, and that was still up for debate. So I've been operating under the assumption that we had set aside money to get this process started in 2017 to cut the lag time down. And as he said, we'll figure out how to staff it. But I guess I was confused, and I guess I'd like to know, if it's not for getting the process started, what is this line under Public Building Commission?
The line was put there to allow us to get the process started. However, as we discussed in some of the workshops, it's in the budget, but the anticipated source of the funding is to come from somewhere else within either the operating budget of the fire department or within our overall budget. So it's not an additional. It's to say we can put $4 million toward this, but it's not part of my debt fund. And that's why I put it in the Public Building Commission to note, when it's in the Public Building Commission, I have to identify a source of funding that it's going to be used to cover that expense. To date, we haven't identified what that source of funding could be. What is contemplated is that we will develop that savings within the $50 million budget within the fire department and be able to designate $300,000-$400,000 a year, during this time period to pay for that fire station. And as we've gone through the strategic plan in our labor management relations over the past several months, we're in a path that puts us in a place where I believe we'll be able to get there, but we're not there yet, to come up with solutions to be able to say, when we hit 2017, we'll know we'll be able to save that money, direct it from that source that's already built into our budget, and say that'll go toward the debt service on that. Then we'll bring that forward back to the commission when we do our debt obligations and go out for $4 million or whatever the amount is we contemplate for the fire station that we're going to build, and say we're going to build that. That's where the funding will come from, and allow us to move forward in 2017.
Here's the problem. We know we have. I'm sorry, Hal. Go ahead.
Mr. Walker.
I wanted to just simply, I agree with Mike. We need Commissioner Kane. We need a fire station.
Can you speak directly into the microphone, please?
You sure? You want that? All right. Can everybody hear me?
That is perfect, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Kane. I think that there's no question there's one needed out there. I want to add a little historical data to this, or information, actually. In the period before unification, the city council applied to the county commission and was given the opportunity to annex the area of Piper, which had been unincorporated. And fire service was their responsibility, and what they did was they had the pole barn. But at that time, the number of people living out there was severely, well, compared to today, it was vastly reduced. A number of commitments in annexation were made, and among those was fire service, police service, and I don't believe that the people in Piper, and I certainly know that, as I think I was the chief counsel then, I didn't understand that to be that we would just put our firemen in the pole barn in lieu of the volunteers that had been working before. I've made this point before. As a commissioner, as a citizen and taxpayer, I'm troubled by the unified government making commitments. Maybe not any of you were here when all these commitments have been made. BPU pilot, the fire station, or services in general being provided. It troubles me that we don't take them with some level of seriousness, at least more seriously than we do. I would hope that if we make commitments to people as commissioners that are off in the future somewhere, that our successors in office, those that follow us, will have enough integrity and decency to honor those. I realize we can't bind future governments, and those governments, maybe they can't bind us, but I am very troubled by what we do not do or do not fulfill, because it's easier to put it off to some future date. I don't know what the right answer is here. I don't think we should wait on the planning process for for this fire department based entirely upon the contingency of what the outcome of operational savings might be in the fire department. I would not want, I know when I bought my house, one of the reasons I bought my house, even though I was young and I didn't realize it was an inferior firehouse, was there was a firehouse 5 minutes from me in Highland Crest. I mean, it wasn't the make or break of the deal, no, but I wouldn't want to live where I had to depend on guys to get to the firehouse and then come to my house. So I think if we want to see growth in that area and continue to have growth that is responsible, we have got to start the process. Now, maybe we fund it down the road out of those operational savings, but if we don't start now, I just, you know, if I were going to be building out there, I'd want to know there was a firehouse on the way, because there's a lot of places to build that have firehouses already. So, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Kane.
Okay, you know, we're still going to collect $15,130,000 out there. It's a tremendous amount of money. The place has grown 185%, and we're supported by a pole barn and no ambulance. If you have a stroke, and hopefully the ambulance is at 94th and State, and you got to go all the way to Piper High School, let's say your grandparent was there, then they get in there and they say, well, it takes 10, 15 minutes to get there, 10, 15 minutes to work on them, and you don't take a stroke victim to Providence, you take them to Shawnee Mission or Bethany, and you have that 1 hour window. Yeah, KU, I'm sorry. You have that 1 hour window. And in that 1 hour window, your family is at risk. And if you can get them there fast enough, you'll be able to talk to your family again. I've been working on this for the 11 years. And when I found out that we pay $15,160,000 and we can't spend $30,000 for a new to start a new building, start the new process. And I know that, and like Brian said, same thing General Motors said, you worry about manning it later. We need a place to put the folks along with the other things that are going to be happening here on this side of town. Because if we wait until we try to get money, then how many more years is that going to happen out there? And at the rate at 185%, and these numbers are 2014, not 2015, not 2016. It's a simple request. I realize it's a lot of money, but if we don't do something now, and a lot of us live out there, and something happens to our family, how are we going to feel?
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I heard Mr. Bach, in response to Commissioner McKiernan's question, basically say the money is budgeted in the CMIP. Is that correct?
No, I said the money could ultimately be budgeted within the fire department today.
Through the Public Building Commission.
Well, the money is within, we have a $50 million budget for fire operations. Okay. So if we identify where the savings can be within that department's operations, then we could dedicate a stream of $300,000 or $400,000 of that to go toward issuance of debt in the Public Building Commission.
Okay.
Or we may come back with a different solution, but I put it in Public Building Commission because I wanted to be clear, we don't have it funded as like we would any other debt project.
It just sounds to me like we're very close to being on the same page. I'd like to ask us to make the commitment for this one station for the process to get started, to go ahead and make the commitment to start the process and follow through with the plan that's on the table, the plan that's in place, and see if we can't get to the 300,000 that we need, but make the commitment for it. That's what I would like to see happen.
I think I'd like to weigh in at this point. There is a plan. We have money in the budget now for site acquisition and design, is that right?
Yes.
So we are actively working on site selection, site acquisition, and design for the new firehouse. That's already in the budget. That money's in the budget now for us to do that work. The commitment is clear that we need to implement our study, and the study calls for a new firehouse out west. We do not have to implement the whole study before we build that first firehouse. So the holdup right now, and really we're going forward with site acquisition and design right now. So we're not waiting for everything to line up. We have to do that process. Is right now we're working on, we have completed our contract negotiations with 12 of our 13 bargaining units. The only one we have not reached a conclusion with is the fire department. And there are some components in the fire contract that have to be changed in order for us to implement the study. In order to recognize the savings in the size of the department that the study calls for reductions that allow us to fund it. I believe that there's enough money in that savings to fund the building of the new fire stations we need, fire stations plural. My understanding is, we're going to finish that contract sometime this fall. We'll have that contract sealed up, and then we'll be able to implement the full study. And as soon as that happens, we will be able to build this fire station, and we could potentially build it. You can build it with temporary notes. We can go out, if we make the decision, we don't need new budget authority in 2017. We have the budget authority and the ability through temp notes that as soon as this commission says go build that station, we can build it, and then we won't need to worry about the budgeting items until 2018. So I don't believe there's a need in the 2017 budget to allocate money for that, because even if we're going to build it in 2017, we wouldn't have a payment yet. We would have temp notes that we would just bond it. So the key then is a commitment by this commission, and I've heard the commitment resoundingly because we adopted the recommendations as a commission from the fire study. We're in the implementation phase that we're going to build a station out west. There's no question about that. We probably need to build 8 stations because we have a major need for realignment of our stations and for new stations. And many of them are in deplorable condition because, frankly, Commissioner, we don't need 1 out west. We need 2 because that pole barn's got to be replaced. And so we have multiple needs. And so I want to honor the spirit of this, which is we're committed to building a station out west, no question. We have the tools in hand already to do that between the site acquisition money and the design money and the temporary notes for 2017 that we could go forward as soon as we say go. And so that's already at our disposal. So I don't think we need to the motion was to put $300,000 into the 2017 budget. I don't think that's necessary to build that fire station. I think what I hear is we just want to make sure we hear the commitment.
I want $300,000 to get it going.
All right. Commissioner Bynum.
Well, I don't know about the money, but I really want to hear the commission make the commitment tonight, whether it's within the budget or within the existing, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I just want to hear this commission make the commitment tonight that this site acquisition, this planning, and this station will take shape in 2017, whether we need to add 300 or find 300,000 or move 300,000. I don't know that I really care, but I'd like to hear the commission commit to a fire station in Piper. I said that during the budget workshop. It sounds like you're telling me that the money is budgeted.
The money for the design and site acquisition is
Design
budgeted.
and
If
site
we say build it,
acquisition is
Mr. Bach, what's the process? If we say build that thing in 2017, what do you do?
Well, our first steps are going to be to go through and identify the exact location or close to it that we want to be. So we'll go through site acquisition. Once we acquire the site, then we'll start doing design work to determine, how it'll look on that site, how it'll fit, how many bays we're going to use within that fire station. And then we would start to, once we get that done, then we'll start submitting through our planning and zoning process to advance it.
And what would you need in terms of budgetary authority in 2017 to make that happen?
Well, I mean, beyond, obviously the site acquisition and the design is money we have in place. In order for me to go out for bid and bring a contractor in, then I would need to have the commitment for the entire fire station.
Right, but say we gave you the commitment for the entire fire station, say it's $3 to $4 million, whatever it costs to build that fire station. Would you need budget in the 2017 budget in order to pay for that? Or would it come into the 2018 budget? Can we not put it in a bond issue with temporary notes and build it?
Now, if I were going to start the fire station in 2017, then I would need budget authority to build the entire project.
You'd need $4 million?
Well, I need authority to spend $4 million because ultimately I will issue a contract for $4 million. We'll go out and we will issue a temp note, a bond, whatever the most efficient tool is as we go through it. We'll issue that, and then we would need to start payments on that probably in 2018 or 19 to make that happen.
So I guess that's my point, is that we can build it in 2017 without $300,000 of additional money in the budget. We would just need to give the authority to do that.
I would say that would be correct. Kathleen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, if we were going to issue lease revenue bonds for the $4 million capital project for fire station, then the annual debt service would likely begin next calendar year, fiscal 18. The issue has to do with trying to carve out $300,000 from the existing fire station budget. We currently have the funds within the fire station budget to make a debt service payment. It would just be a matter of doing a budget adjustment, but we would reduce some lines in the budget in the fire station or in the fire department budget and add that budget to another debt service payment line. So
Okay.
theoretically, we do have the budget. The problem is that we would have to make sure that we had sufficient monies to operate the facility once it's constructed. So.
Okay. All right, that's what I wanted to know. So I think there are two issues here, and I want to hear from the rest of the commissioners, but then I want to try to sort out the issues as best as possible. So thank you. I'm going to call on Commissioner McKiernan.
So Doug, that $4 million that's in the CMIP, so of course that's just, you would need authority to borrow the $4 million even though we're not going to begin paying it back for 1, maybe 2 years. And if I do my rough math on $4 million at our current borrowing rate, we'd be locking ourselves into about $250,000 a year, $260,000 a year for 20 years. So we would need to find $260,000 a year starting next year. And even if we decided that we could put that in there this year, put a hard 260 in there, and when we get the operational savings back, it pays back our hard 260 and we're effectively neutral for the year. I mean, because I think you expect to find some operational savings. So we put in a hard 260, whatever it might be in the budget. We get those savings, it pays that back. we end up neutral for the year in terms of that piece of the puzzle. Am I off on that?
Well, one, I think it is a little bit more than that, but I don't know that that's the question right now. It's the commitment going forward. Financially, I don't need, I wouldn't probably take money from the general fund at all in 2017. You said it correctly in the sense that I would need a hard commitment to say we're going to go out and issue that much debt for the station in 2017. So we would know then going forward, we're going to have that commitment to fund it. And just go from the aspect that we will identify savings in future years or however you want to play it to fund that debt service. But we would just move it over from, I would, from this standpoint, I would move it from debt service or move it from Public Building Commission into debt service and make it as committed debt. And then when we do our debt package in March of 2017, we would add to it the amount of money required in order to build this station. And then future years after that, we would have it. It would just be a commitment to it. I mean, we would have to, one, you're either just going to do it from general fund and fund the debt service, or from the debt service fund, which we know we need to add money to, or we would identify savings somewhere and then commit that over to it. And I guess from that standpoint, you could commit that you're going to find the savings for it somewhere in the at the plan as we go through it, and say, here's our commitment, and we're going forward.
All right.
Got two more commissioners.
Commissioner Markley?
So I think what Brian was saying and what I'm trying to say are along the same line. So I think Commissioner Kane's concern, he can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we've always made a lot of commitments, but a commitment's only as good as the dollars behind it. And what we're hearing is the money is on a page in the budget, but the money only exists if we find the savings through the other operational strategies. So Mike is saying, what happens if we don't find those savings? Does that mean I'm not going to get a fire station out west when this whole commission has said that's a priority of ours? So I guess my question, and I think we're kind of thinking the same thing, why not just put $300,000 cash in there? And if we find the savings, we don't spend that $300,000 because we use the stuff we saved. But if we don't find the savings, Commissioner Kane has assurances that there's money out there that we could use to fill any gap that we didn't find. So let's say we only find $200,000 in savings. We might have to use $100,000 of our cash, but at least we're not in a position where we're saying, well, we didn't find the savings, so can't do anything this year, and we're another year behind in this priority that we've set. That's what I'm thinking.
Commissioner Walker?
I think...
Can you speak directly into the microphone, please?
I think Commissioner Markley said it. We budget a lot of things, and it's all based on anticipated revenues. And when those revenues fall short, we don't have the actual cash dollars, and we then adjust or cut budgets, operating budgets, general fund. I'm hearing this conversation like we're already out there looking for a piece of ground, and we've got somebody on the ground trying to buy a piece of property, and we got a design firm that is trying to design this fire station, and I don't believe that. Who is this? Who's doing this?
Let's be clear. I said we have the money in the budget for those things.
We have money, but there is no guarantee that the money will ever come through.
What do you mean?
The whole plan seems to be based on some hope that we're going to save money in fire operations when the matters that are outstanding are finally concluded. And if that doesn't happen, there's no money for a fire station. I guess what you're hearing from the rest of us is we don't care about that issue. What we care about is that we have an obligation to provide a reasonable amount of fire service and emergency services, ambulances, to the Piper area, to western Wyandotte County. I don't care where it's located in western Wyandotte County. I have no expertise in picking this strategic spot, but our obligation is not contingent upon us finding savings in some way. Our obligation is there whether we save a dime when it comes to fire operations. Now, I hope we are correct and that we are able to generate substantial savings through initiatives outlined in the plan. But I think we got the horse and the cart backwards. In this particular case, the fire station is essential, regardless of whether we ever save a dime in operations. And that's how I'm standing on this. We start this fire station, we give instructions to Mr. Bach that you start this, you start spending money, you get this land, you design it. If we can go vertical next year, so much the better. That's where I'm standing on this thing. Not because I don't want to do the plan or I don't want to do as much savings as I've already said. We can't sustain $1.7 million in overtime in the fire department. And I agree that it needs to be cut, but I don't see why we gotta put that first, and then if we're able to do that, then the Piper people get a fire station. All I'm hearing is we got it in the budget doesn't mean a damn thing if there's no money that comes in to do it. What I'm saying is I want the money dedicated for that purpose out of the existing budget that we know we're going to get.
County Administrator?
I just want to clarify, no, we're not out there doing the work. We're under a labor management agreement now with our fire union that we will work with them to go through and cite priorities to which station as a management labor team we feel would be the most appropriate one. So I haven't taken and moved out in front of that to say this Piper one. And I realize you as a commission can make the decision to say, we're going to build this station. But the money that was built into the budget for the planning purpose and the design of it is one that's intended that would be the first station identified by the joint committee. And it may very well be that the joint committee comes up and identifies that the Piper station is first, but so far that committee has not come forward with that recommendation. And as I was directed to be with that from a labor management, I haven't made that assumption that we would just get out in front of it and start doing it.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions. Statement first. I don't think, well, I'll speak for myself. That's all I can speak for. I have no doubt that there is a fire station needed out west. And in my district, there's going to have to be a discussion about consolidation, possibly of two. My question, though, deals with this money that the commissioner wants to have, I guess, specifically identified. Is that right, Commissioner Kane?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is for me, let's get down to it. Where do we take this money from? These are the type of things we usually hash out at the workshops. So where would this money come from? Would it come from the budget already allocated for the fire department? I thought I understood that if we wanted to build, there could be a bond what was this about the $3 or $4 million that Ms. Financian was discussing? I need that just clarified for me, because eventually if we're going to make a commitment that's backed with dollars, which is what I hear Commissioner Kane wanting, the bottom line is where does that come from in the current budget?
Okay. And if you give us direction to do this, I'd probably need a few minutes to work through and just verify everything with my staff before we would adopt the budget. But my assumption would be I would not need any active dollars over what we have in the 2017 budget in order to make this happen. What I would be doing is moving the money from the fire station where it's in the Public Building Commission over into debt. And put it into debt, that would mean you are committing as a governing body that you're going to pay for that $4 million going forward. And that's where we'd put it, and we would establish it. It'd be general fund obligation coming to it. We would issue a temporary note for construction on it, most likely next year. Then we'd put the money over into the bank and we would start the project, bid it. Then I would enter into a hard contract with whatever company for however much money it takes to do it, and then we would start to make temporary note payments on it effective in 18. So I wouldn't have any, I would not have, I don't believe, and like I said, I would want to spend a couple minutes with my staff before I would give you the formal recommendation, but I don't think I would do anything to change the 2017 dollars, but I do need to change the CMIP budget to reflect that and make sure that changes kind of the category of what's being approved.
So your recommendation, Mr. Bach, you wouldn't be adding $300,000, you'd be adding $4 million to
To the CMIP
the
budget,
CMIP,
yes.
and you'd add the whole value of that fire station to the CMIP budget.
Yes, I have to, I can't, I don't go out for a contract for 300. I go out for a contract for 3 or 4 million. Cash basis law requires that I have all the money allocated to go into that project before I could enter that contract.
So that's how you would do it, and it would not require a reworking of the budget numbers. It would simply be adding $4 million in debt.
Yeah, I don't think I would have to rework anything for 17, though, like I said, I would want a couple of minutes just to go back through that for what we will be approving in this year's budget before we adopt it tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Kane.
Are you going to do that now, Doug?
Well, let's get through the list, and then we can, if
Well,
you want to
and-
give him direction to do that, he can
Well,
talk to his staff.
I want to
and then
give
we can-
direction to do that, but, you know, they're not going to build the hotel out there at the casino, so I would think the first 300 grand could come from there. You know, I mean, we know they're not going to build that. We know we got money coming in, you know, so we don't have to do anything. You got 300, you got $1 million. How much money comes from that if they don't build it?
The $1.4 million penalty this year.
Okay, so we take $300,000 of that money, move it over here, and then we only get 1.1, and then we worry about the rest of the stuff later. I really want to do this. I think it's very, very important. Doug, please work it out.
All right, Commissioner McKiernan.
So, Mr. Bach, as I understand, if you, I don't understand quite where the set off or the offset is for the $4 million that's in CMIP now, because that certainly looks like a hard number, and it looks like it contributes to the CMIP totals under debt financed projects. But let's say we were to go ahead and commit that. It is possible that we could realize the debt payment, the annual debt payment, from operational savings yet to be realized. It's possible that that money could be recovered and allocated in future years, and we're actually pretty confident that there is some money that can be recovered and put toward that future debt service payment. Is that correct?
I would expect it.
And committing here does not solve at all the issue of staffing, which is an issue that has to be resolved separate from any building, and it's going to be a problem that I would assume would be resolved cooperatively through a labor management process. Is that?
Yes, I would assume so, Commissioner. I don't think we would want to, and I'm not trying to be
That's
flippant,
fine.
but I'm certain you're not wanting to build a fire station and not people in it. So, yeah, the staffing issue,
that is an issue
the ongoing staffing issue goes way over what the cost of
That
actually
is an
building that
ongoing
fire
issue that
station
is
will
still
be.
being actively worked and could ultimately play on this. But I guess what I keep coming back to is, even if there were no operational efficiencies for us to recover, the change of our population is such that it suggests that this station would become a reality anyway for us. We just happen to be in a situation where I believe we're going to recover what is going to be needed to make that annual debt payment. Now, one thing you just brought up, though, is, are you suggesting that your team, task force, the group that you're working with, that would ultimately suggest the first place to build a new fire station could theoretically come back and say that this is the area of town, we do not believe this area of town should have the first fire station that we build new? Is that possible?
It could.
But ultimately, that group is going to come back with a recommendation
For priorities of fire station locations. Yes, that's the intent. We hope to come out from the facilities build on that. And Mr. Connor, if I'm saying anything wrong there, let me know, because I think you work on the
So I guess my
facility
question
side
here
of it.
would be, if the commission were to say it's Piper and that group were to say, no, that's not the top priority,
We'll talk about it after that.
so we would be open to making a change.
They're not, that group is, they're not talking about one, they're talking about two.
Okay.
I'm just starting with one. But, you know, the thing is it shows that we pay $15,160,000 and we have no ambulance out there. We have a paramedic, but no ambulance.
So we
if
could commit this as part of the 2017, commit that money that's on the CMIP debt schedule, and feel at least somewhat, if not reasonably confident, that the annual debt payment can be recovered through our ongoing process.
I think so.
Okay.
Commissioner Markley?
As often is the case, Commissioner McKiernan has read my mind and already covered the topic. I was just going to ask about how the debt payments would then work with our recovered operational costs.
All right, so what I'm going to ask is, just for clarity, I'm going to call for a 15-minute recess. I'm going to ask Mr. Bach to talk with his financial team, come back to us based on the motion that's on the table, and come back to us with his recommendation on how to make this work best based on this discussion. And I'll just reflect what I've heard. I've heard that this commission is willing to make a commitment that the first station we'd like to see, and I think that message needs to be taken back to that team. The first station we'd like to see built is a new station in Piper to provide adequate coverage out there, which is exactly what our study calls for. I think that's an excellent idea. And Mr. Bach's going to work out the financial piece in terms of how that is going to be paid for. And so let's take a 15-minute recess, and I think there's a consensus to do that. So Mr. Bach, if you would meet with your team and come back with a recommendation, then we can vote on it at that time. We are in recess for 15.
Mayor, I just know you could recess, go ahead and take your land bank action while you're in recess. And we can go start working on this. But that's
not going to take very long. We're just going to take a recess. We're in recess until 8:30. It is 8:30. Mr. Bach is not back with his team yet, but we do have some land bank items in front of us that I believe we can take care of in the interim. So we are going to, much of it is, bless you. So we are going to switch gears and reconvene as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. And we have a consent agenda in front of us. And I would ask if there's anyone in attendance tonight who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda. Please step to the microphone to do that at this time.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded, and I let the record show there is no one moving to remove an item. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, we're going to reconvene as the Board of Trustees for the Unified Government. We can do a lot of these. So we're going to start down the list. As I look at the ordinances we need, we have established the downtown SMID. We've come to the budget items. Items A, B, C, D, E are all eligible. The only one that we're holding on is F. So I will entertain motions for the remaining items that are before us.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to object. I have an item I want to vote separately on, which is the...
No, we're not going to take, we're going to take them all individually.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, thank you, that's an important clarification. Okay, thank you. So, item A for the library board tax rate. This is on page 8 of the beginning of your non-planning and zoning.
Second.
It's way at the front. Do you want me to show you where it is? Almost.
I don't know the same book.
Number 1 is the Schmidt.
We've already done that.
This is the wrong book.
2A.
All right.
Here it is.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. All right, item A, library board tax rate.
We have a motion and a second,
There's been a
sir.
motion and a
A
second.
motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
That brings us to the downtown SMID.
Second.
Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
That brings us to item C, the sewer service rate.
Second.
Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
That brings us to item D, the BPU pilot rate.
Move for approval.
Second.
Statement.
Commissioner Walker.
My annual statement, I am opposed to this simply on the basis that we have not made any progress in reducing the pilot fee. That was a commitment we made. I'm going to vote against this until we start getting serious about reducing pilot.
All right. I don't see any other comments. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
King. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
No.
The vote is 8-1. That motion carries.
That brings us to our 2016-2017 annual action plan and amended citizen participation plan.
Move to approve?
Second.
Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
King. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, we are now at our final item for the evening. We have a revised yellow sheet en route. We are going to recess until it is here, but I would invite us not to leave the room because it could be here shortly. And as soon as it arrives, then we'll want to take action. So we are in recess until that arrives. Would you like to walk us through the changes on the yellow sheet? In fact, we have approved everything except the ordinance for the amended budget and annual budget, including the land bank. So this is our final item. We would ask you to walk us through the yellow sheet in its entirety, please.
You want me to go through every item on here or just what I've added to it?
Just what you've added to it, because the rest of it is in keeping with what we
Did in all the budget workshops.
did in the budget workshops ending on Monday night.
Okay, so what we have on the last two lines, and what we've done is identify where we have in the budget now CMIP for fire station, and that is under the category of Public Building Commission, abbreviated there as PBC, for $4 million. We've deducted that from the PBC, which is an uncommitted funding source to that, and moved it over into the CMIP for the fire station, Piper Fire Station, because I think you expressly want where it's at, and moved that into city debt and added $4 million. So the financial encumbrance for 2017 does not change what you're obligating from the general fund. What it does say is when we go out and do our bond issue, we will add $4 million to city debt, and then you will be obligated to fund that debt every year thereafter going forward. And that's where you'll see the change when we bring that back in previous years, saying, here's the money that goes ahead and pays for that debt. And I think this denotes it, so when you approve this last item on the agenda, number F, the resolution and ordinances attached to that specifically designate that you are authorizing us to go forward and issue all the debt-funded projects built into this budget book, and this will be one of them.
All right, so, and I want to specify on our CMIP, we usually have 5 years. Is this $4 million in the 2017 CMIP?
Yes.
Okay.
It's under the category of 2017, so I thought that would come out that way.
Okay, that's very important. All right, so, Mr. Kane, the request you have made is now incorporated in different form from your request. Are you comfortable with the way the administrator has put this in here?
But that's dedicated $4 million, correct?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
That's what it says. It's dedicated in 2017 debt finance projects.
I am good with that.
All right, would you like to withdraw your motion and move a motion for the adoption of the amended budget?
I withdraw my second.
Yes, I withdraw my motion, and with the modifications that the administrator made with the $4 million committed to building the Piper Fire Station.
All right, so the motion is before us for our entire budget.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded.
And just clarify, this is an amended yellow sheet that has been incorporated.
Thank you. Please note for the record, it is the amended yellow sheet. All right, any further discussion? Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
I would like to thank the commission for this huge modification in the budget. It's much needed, and I really appreciate what we did tonight. Thank you.
I would also like to add a thank you to the commission for the hard work over this last year, especially the last few weeks. And I think we owe our tremendous staff for their work a round of applause for all the great job that they did. All right, and Mr. Bach, job well done. Commission, we have a budget. We are adjourned.